We're going to start with a lecture, and today's topic is how to take advantage of all kinds of chess advantages we have. Sometimes we have, let's say, the initiative, we have a push, we have a chance to push forward because our position is better. It could be because of development, it could be because of material advantage. This time, the example that we're starting with today shows us an advantage of two bishops. We look at the position, we see that black has two bishops, and white only has a bishop and a knight. We know that they're worth about the same, 3 points. But in an open position with pawns, that the position is really open up, pawns on both sides of the board, bishops can become really, really powerful and very, very agile. In this position, some of you might say, well, we look at the position, we think maybe it's equal. Each side has 6 pawns and the same amount of material. But if you show this to a master or a grandmaster, they will say, no, I don't think so. They're going to say, definitely black is better, because this bishop on c8 that looks really boring and sleepy, he's going to become very, very strong. And white doesn't have a light square bishop to counter it. If you take this knight away and you put a bishop here, let's say, a white bishop here, then of course the assessment of the position would change completely. Definitely in white's favor. He's going to be better developed and he's going to have the same 2 bishops as black. So in this position, which was played by a first world champion, Wilhelm Steinitz, you will see an example of how to use the 2 bishops very much in our favor. So, step by step. First of all, he looks at the position and says, well, white has reason to be proud of one piece and one piece only. Which one is that? Who could tell me? Yes. Oh. Yes. The knight on d4. Sitting pretty on a nice square, it looks like, right? All the other pieces are not very impressive. So step 1, kick it out. Immediately sending the knight back. All right, so the knight is being kicked. Not that many good squares to go to. If he goes to the queen side, anyways, black wants to play the move b6, as you will see. So if you go knight b3, it's not really helping your cause a lot. He tried to play knight f3. And again, the point is not so much to analyze the game in great detail and see if really there's a big improvement for white somewhere during the game. The point is to show how to take advantage of superiority. And again, in this position, it's black to move. And if you were black, I don't know what you guys would have played, but I think that the move that the world champion, the first world champion played was very, very good. He immediately thinks, okay, my advantage is having a light square bishop where my opponent doesn't have one. And if I could put it, use my imaginary hand and just put it anywhere on the board, where would I like it to be? Do I want it to be on this diagonal? Do I want it to be on this diagonal? Do I want it to be on this diagonal, or do I want it to be somewhere else? And he thought, okay, the most threatening diagonal is the longest diagonal, the H1AA diagonal, and I'm going to put it right there. And how am I going to do it? I'm going to do it by playing the move b6. First of all, I'm protecting the pawn on c5, A, and my bishop is ready to come to b7 as my plan. Once the bishop comes to b7, he's going to be almost like a dragon bishop, attacking the whole diagonal, nothing to counter it. White has a very, very passive position. Notice that my queen right now is very annoying, nagging the pawn on a2, for example. That's one thing. So if you just play simple chess, you will probably just lose. If you just try to play something like, let's say, h3, bishop b7, king h1, I'm just going to advance, just take control of the file with both my rooks. My queen is going to be attacking all the pawns. If you ever try to defend them, then this bishop will open up. Just bad news. So white tries to play a clever move, knight e5. Okay, I understand that move. You want to, A, nag the queen, move it away from its superior post on c4, and you are praying that the bishop will take it. Now, I want to bring into consideration one thing that I see a lot in scholastic chess. Many times I see players simply trade a lot. They tend to trade pieces. They say, you know what? That piece is attacking me. Let me just get rid of it. Okay, sometimes the piece is so well placed, or so threatening, or so superior, that yes, you want to get rid of it. You just want to eliminate it, and that's understandable. But in a position like this, you have to really think twice. Like the knight looks really impressive on e5, but there's several things that you need to think about. A, this bishop is super valuable. There is no way I'm trading this guy for this guy. Second of all, my queen can just withdraw back without much consequence. And third of all, the knight isn't going to stay here forever. It didn't stay here forever because I had a pawn to kick it out, and it's not going to stay here forever because I have a pawn to kick it out. And I can always reposition my bishop should I need to. So Bishop takes knight would be a really bad move, completely giving away everything you have. And again, it looks like such an easy decision. It's almost like you have a burden. The knight is attacking my queen. All I have to do is take it. If I took it, all my worries of the world will go away. And that is a very bad way of thinking, because you don't think of what you have. What you have is a monster bishop, and just play a simple move like queen e6, and the same worries of the world are off this way. So no need to go crazy and just give up an advantage for the panic of, oh my God, my queen is under attack. So now, again, I want to play bishop to b7 with a monster bishop. So white tries to play queen f3. Again, I think a very understandable move, in my opinion. The queen is trying to control the diagonal first and attack the rook in the corner. Of course, you cannot play bishop b7. And again, if you try to be tricky and play rook b8 with the idea of bishop b7, knight c6 is very annoying. And I'm sure you can see that in the variation rook to b8, knight to c6, bishop b7. At first it looked, I tricked my opponent, I pinned the knight, but the knight is going to go knight takes d8, unpinning, because the knight is also attacking this queen, and black is just losing. So that's going to be really terrible. So black says, okay, I'll play the only move that I have, the only sensible move that I have, but it's good enough. Bishop a6, connecting my rooks, developing my bishop this way. Of course, I have no intention of leaving the bishop on this boring diagonal, but I'm just going to do things at my own pace, because I could not play bishop b7. So now I also have to bring into consideration that once the rook leaves the f-file, I might have a choice at some point to play bishop takes pawn, pawn takes, queen takes, because I'm not just trading, I'm winning material. So white played reasonably with rook to e1. The rook is opposite the queen. So now comes the next phase in the plan. Pawn to f6. In this position, he is kicking the knight away. The knight cannot be tolerated on e5. It's just doing too much damage. And the knight says, okay, well, if I go to c6, who knows if I'll ever see the light of day, right? Like rook c8, and what's going to be happening now? Who's going to defend the knight? So he has to bring the knight to the only other square that is safe, which is on g4. And black says, okay, on we go. h5, kicking the knight further, and the knight has only one good square here. So with two simple moves that improved our position on the king side, it might look like we weakened things a little bit, but you'll see that black is fixing things in about 1 second. But with two simple moves, we kick the knight all the way from e5 to f2. So from being a proud knight, it's now probably one of the worst pieces on the board. Now, in this position, again, black has to think of a plan. He has to worry about two different things. One, at some point, white might play the move f5, which needs to definitely be considered, because after queen takes, we trade queens, and the pawn structure looks really funny. And if you play pawn takes, then the queen might take on h5. That looks even worse. And also, remember, we really, really, really feel like having our bishop on the long diagonal. The bishop is doing absolutely nothing here. I want to play bishop b7, but the queen now is going to take it. So that brings us to the next move, and very easily we can understand why it was played by black. He moves away the queen from danger. He overprotects his pawn on h5, and he protects the square on b7 to enable himself to play bishop to b7. Watch. Queen f7. Beautiful. Sometimes, you look at this position. If I just left this position with you and say, okay, black to move, what would you play? You might suggest 10 different reasonable moves, but in my opinion, this is really a neat move. Because it's a simple retreat, but it's what we call in chess an aggressive retreat. You're not just retreating for the sake of backing down or backing off, but you're going to be very aggressive in a second. So the queen is just sitting and waiting, in ambush, just waiting for the proper moment to get back into the game. And boy, is this queen going to cause trouble, you will see. Now the point is the queen is in touch with the h-pawn and supporting b7. So white plays f5. Again, I think the most aggressive move. What else? b3 was another choice, but I think that you play b3, you just open up things for the other bishop. And now, of course, f takes g6 is very, very annoying. So black simply plays g5. So for one moment, we might say, hey, Aviv, what did you do to the bishop on g7? It looks horrible. And I'm going to say, just wait. Patience. The element of time is important, but not super important in this position. Now white has to think to himself, okay, what do I do next? My bishop on e3 is really not a good bishop. My knight doesn't have that many good squares to go to. And in any event, bishop b7 is coming right now. So he says, okay, rook d1, time to fight for the file. If not, bishop b7 and rook up and the other rook over, it's just going to give black a very easy game. Needless to say that I don't want to even hear about the queen taking this pawn ever, because several reasons. First of all, in this position, rook is going to come back to a1, maybe embarrassing the bishop a little bit, maybe queen c4, b3, and that could be just bad news. But in the very least, we have queen takes h5 all the time. The queen is kind of in touch with this pawn. So first things, bishop to b7. Queen moves away. And now the queen let go of h5. And now again, some of you might say, hey, now that the queen is not in touch with h5 and the bishop moved from the a file, can we just take this pawn on a2? Well, this is part of the lesson for today. When you have a good position like you have now, don't give your opponent unnecessary counterplay. Don't give him a chance to get active. In this position, the white pieces are just like one big mess. The knight isn't going anywhere, the bishop on e3 looks like just one fat pawn, and the queen on g3 is not doing anything aggressive. Let's not take a silly pawn on a2, which is not going to help us right now. We're not going to queen a pawn or anything. That's only going to be a factor later on. But if you take the pawn on a2, then he's going to go queen c7, immediately doubly attacking the rook on d8, attacking the bishop on b7, and the queen becomes super active. So for example, let's take a look at the variation as it's mentioned. If takes, queen c7, you have to give up the file, because otherwise you're going to lose material. Rook takes, now you have to save the bishop, so bishop d5. And already we can see that for one pawn, white owns the file, his queen is aggressive, and the black queen is somewhere on a2 doing God knows what. And now we can play something like queen d7, and it's like, what the heck happened? Black is just defending and defending and defending, and it's like, what did he do? Nothing good. So no way he's going to take the pawn. Instead, he's going to say to himself, okay, how can I improve my position? If I'm not going to go pawn hunting, what am I going to do? And here is how we get to the move. Okay, this bishop right now is not that good, but I don't have a great way of activating it. I thought like I could just pick up this bishop on g7 and put it somewhere good. If I can play bishop e5, I would definitely do it. However, that's not very legal. So I'm thinking, okay, I have to wait with my bishop. We have to be patient. What do we do? And I'm thinking, okay, what else can I improve in my position? I really don't like my rook on a8. What is he doing? He's not doing much. But if I play rook c8 or rook b8, did I help the cause? No. So I have to basically understand that in order to activate the a rook, I have to do something with my d rook. And that's what we're going to do. Rook to d5. Fantastic. We're preparing the doubling of the rooks. The other rook is ready to come right to d8 and become one of the more active pieces in the game. And also remember that pawn on f5, we're kind of looking to hunt for it. If I have a chance to take it, I will definitely take it. So, again, white is thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to protect that pawn on f5? This is not so easy. So he plays rook takes, queen takes. Our queen that was sitting and waiting now came out of the ambush, and look at this battery. When we have a queen and bishop on the same diagonal like this, we say it's a battery. And this is a fantastic battery along the long diagonal. The poor queen is completely tied down to defend against the mate. This is not happy news. What to do? So, in the game he went rook d1. If you would have played queen h3, at first you think, hey, that's a great solution. Defend the pawn on f5 and attack the pawn on h5. But again, quickly remember that the queen is completely tied down to the mate. All I have to do is tickle it, and the queen is already kind of stuck. I cannot take the pawn on h5 because queen takes g2 looks like mate. Bad news. So he plays rook to d1, and now, thank you very much, that's my pawn. So already we can see that black's very simple strategy gave him an extra pawn, but that's not the end of the game. And already he's very happy. Two good bishops. We know that this bishop is going to open up at some point, but this bishop is just with no counter. Now white can just play normal chess and lose, or he can try to be a little active, which he tries. Again, queen to here. But unlike before, now I can play bishop d5, and notice that my queen is very well placed. It's not somewhere vacationing far away. It's right in the business of things right here. So there's no queen d7 or any follow-up. So, pawn to b3, or else we're going to lose more pawns on the queen side. And black again brings the last piece that's not playing right into the game, rook e8, and you can see that the bishop on e3 is a target. And what to do with this bishop? The only way to do something with it is go backwards. So before you do that, white tries to, again, make things a little more spicy, trying to say, hey, maybe he's going to trade his bishop for my bishop. Of course, black says, no way in the world. That bishop on f7 has great future. Even if I'm going to have to send it to a worse spot for a moment, it's still going to have a great future, while this bishop on c1 is just a lame bishop. So, bishop f7, bishop c1, saving the bishop, and on we go. Rook e2. Notice how in 2 moves, the sleepy rook from the corner goes right into the thick of things and become maybe the most influential piece in the black army. In 2 simple moves that cost no time. Okay, now the knight is attacked, and also a2 is under attack. Rook f1, defending stuff. And again, black gives white no relief at all. Queen c2. Now the threat is to bother the over-occupied rook by playing rook takes knight. When the rook is lifted up, win the bishop on c1, winning 2 minor pieces for a rook. What a bad position for white, really terrible. In the game, he played queen to g3, bringing the queen back, trying to protect his knight. But in this position, black simply took the pawn on a2, and that was the end of that. Now, I'm not telling you to resign in a position like this when you're just down a little material. At the grandmaster level, they just respect each other and say, okay, I know that I have nothing, but if you look at the position, it's really not fun to play with white. Like, my knight has very few moves, my bishop has practically no moves, and all my pawns are weak. The bishops are going to be revived, and notice how beautiful the king is. Of course, this is a completely winning position from black's point of view. So resigning with white is not ridiculous at all. Okay, did you understand the example? Okay, good. On we go to the next one. And I'm going to skip this one for a moment, and I'm going to go with this one. Okay. This is a position that I really love showing my students. And again, it's a kind of position, like I do with many of my positions, that I think you can show players that are strong masters. I've shown this position to 22, 2300s. And I've shown this position to players who are even lower rated than you guys, you know, at all levels, basically. And the thing is, you can always learn something from those positions. Here, let's take a look at the position, understand. This is somewhat of an ending, a technical position. And I'm sure that you can see that white has a real significant advantage here. He really has a great, why? First of all, you should know that when there's a bishop against knight, when pawns on both sides of the board, assuming that the bishop is not blocked by his pawns or some other extreme example, then the bishop is much better than the knight. It's just more agile. The knight can be really clumsy. Like, for example, here, you notice that the knight has no good moves. I can't go forward anywhere. I'm really stuck, very limited. When this bishop is already looking at the pawn, and when a bishop tells the queen stay, that's almost always a good thing. Because black, instead of activating his queen, has to do just babysitting job on the pawn. So if this would have been, the player with the white pieces is Grandmaster Mikhail Botvinnik, who was a world champion and a very, very methodical player. But you will see that even he sometimes has a little lapse of concentration. In this position, he should be winning, I think, in the long run. And all he had to do is play like bishop f3, bring his queen up, a king up, play g4, h4, at the right time g5, and he's controlling both sides of the board. The opponent can do nothing. You're really stuck, because if you push one pawn, then my bishop gets all the light squares, and if you push the other pawn, I'm just going to take it. So really, really a bad position for black. I would say that at the Grandmaster level, the World Championship level, black will suffer forever and probably lose in the end. But in our game, he played the move b4. And okay, I mean, this move doesn't look to change things too much. You think, what's the difference? This looks like even more logical. Now if black plays c5, we're going to play b5, completely control the light squares, then our bishop is going to come here, and black is like running out of moves. His knight is going nowhere, his queen can go nowhere, I can always hide with my king if I need to. And again, in the long run, it looks like just a fun position to play for white. So black said, okay, I'm in trouble, but white's last move of b4 gives me a chance to do something that before I could not have done when the pawn was on b3. And watch what he does. He managed to get activity and make the most out of what he has in the position. His next move must come as a surprise to all of you. When I show it to my students and they don't solve it, and I show them the idea, they're like, wow, that's pretty clever. So I want you to take like a mental picture of this position, like try to etch it in your mind, look at it, and then you'll see what happened in just a few more moves, and you'll see how black improved this position. And the move that he played was d5. It looks like suicide. What is he doing? Not only is here the queen is stuck defending the c6 pawn, he's just pitching a pawn. He's just like, take my pawns. And if you take the pawn, it looks like pawn takes, bishop takes, and then the queen comes to e6. It looks like, what is he doing? He trying to lose fast or what? But no, there is a logic behind it. After pawn takes, he has absolutely no intention of taking this pawn and opening up the bishop, but he's playing c5. A fantastic idea. Really, really, a really clever idea. He gave up one pawn, and what did he achieve? One, he completely blockaded the bishop. Two, his knight, which is the best blockader, has a beautiful spot on d6. This is an extra pawn, but he is not queening. There is no way in the world that the white forces can make the pawn go to d6 without just losing it. And in the meantime, he manages to get himself a protected pass pawn, at least a pass pawn on the c-file, that's going to keep the white forces quite busy. So again, from this position, if the pawn was on b3, this wouldn't work, because after c5, the pawn is not passed. I'm just not going to let you advance it. So once he played b4, pawn takes, c5. Excellent. So takes, white is up a pawn, but all of a sudden black has a world of counterplay. Watch what happens. Bishop f1, knight d6. The sleepy knight that had no moves is all of a sudden right down next to the center. He's already attacking, for example, the pawn here, and he's controlling some important squares. Most importantly, he is going to force this pawn to be pushed. So, queen a3. Again, trying to play for tricks. If c4, then maybe bishop takes c4. If you then takes, you can't take with the knight because it's pinned. If you take with the queen, queen takes d6 check. That could be really bad news for black. So black says, okay, I'm moving away from the pin, and improving my position of the king. So bishop d3, defending the pawn on f5, c4, bishop c2, and now he could have done all kinds of things, like queen b6. And one line that was mentioned was check here and here. Also a good line where black is completely active, and there is no way in the world that he's going to be worse here. But in the game, what he did was also good. He played c3. And again, notice what happened in just several moves. Black has a very, very good pass pawn that keeps white super busy. His bishop, from being a monster bishop that was keeping the poor queen in touch with the pawn, babysitting it forever, is all of a sudden just a blockader. And the sleepy knight that had no moves is now blockading this pawn. And he didn't even say the last word. He is still going to advance. So, queen b4, trying to improve the position. Knight c4. Again, an excellent move. And the point is, after queen c3, queen c5 check, king h1, queen takes d5 check. He traded the c-pawn that wasn't advancing anymore for the d-pawn. And of course, in this position, white agreed to a draw, because he knows that after king g1, queen c5 check, he has nothing. The queen and knight are just too strong. At the very least, with the exposed king, I'm always going to have a perpetual. And what kind of an extra pawn is that? Nothing. So from absolutely a terrible position for white, for black, with one tiny move of b4, the position changed, and black was very smart to take full advantage of it. I really think, I haven't seen many examples like this lately, where from a position where you're completely smothered with no moves, you just do something like this, and look, for the cost of one little pawn, improve your position enough that your opponent has to play accurately to make a draw. That is good success. Okay, our last position for the day before we're going to get to play some chess is actually from one of my games. I don't really like to show many of my games, but sometimes I do. This is a position where I play the hedgehog, and I get into this position with black, and I thought to myself, you know, my opponent's pieces look really funny. One knight is on c2, the other knight is on b2. There's a bishop on b4 that's kind of stuck with my own pieces standing in front of it. And I felt that with all the pieces on the queen side, something has to happen in the center / king side. So, in this position, what do you think black should do here? I'm going to be quiet for just 1 minute, and those of you who watch it on YouTube can just pause for a second as well. But those of you in class, what do you think I should do in this position? Take a look. I'm not going to give you too much time. It's going to be a little unfair to you because I had lots of time to think about what I want to do, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot. But this is like kind of a question. It's an exercise in intuition. Just intuitively, what do you think black should do? You look at the position, and you think, okay, the most normal move, the most sedated move, would be to play rook f to c8. And if you thought about this move, then you did well. That's a very good move. Who can complain about such a logical move? But I thought to myself that while I have the opportunity, maybe I should grab it. Because when I calculated it, I could see nothing wrong with it. And I said to myself, I think that this is a pretty safe continuation. It's a very small risk that I'm taking. So what do you guys think? I want somebody to raise their hand and suggest a move. Only one person has an idea? I promise you one thing, if you're wrong, I'm not going to throw any chairs at you. How about that? Is that a good trade? Okay, Arjun, what do you think? Say again? I like that move. Knight c takes e4. Again, it looks like the white king is a little bit unsafe. All the pieces are on this side. And sometimes people say, hey, what about playing d5 and striking? And I'm like, d5, maybe e5, and then the knight is being chased away, and the other knight is going to find a beautiful home on d4. So as much as I really want to play d5, open up the bishop, hit the center, I don't think it's just enough. However, sacrificing is a really good idea. So, well, what can you do? You have to take, or else you're down a pawn. So pawn takes, knight takes, and now we can see that for a minimal investment of a piece for 2 pawns, black got a ton of activity. Now the weakness of all the white pieces comes into play because first of all, I have a very nasty discovered check. All I want to do is move this knight somewhere painful, right? For example, knight g5 looks like a very serious move. Mainly because after king g1, knight h3 check, king f1, queen h1 is going to be checkmate. So the king is really, really unhappy on g2. So he's got to do something about it. Of course, king to here, knight check, and the king is going to go on a trip. I think one-way ticket, right? It's going to be very unlikely it's going to save itself. So he tried to play the move king g1. Okay. So, of course, I saw thus far. And here, I remember that originally I thought of one thing, and then I said to myself, well, I could still play this move, but why don't I first play something else? So, if you guys suggested knight g5, with the idea of playing knight h3, which is very, very strong, of course, you'd be okay. But I said to myself, this is not going away. And in the meantime, this is looking so funny, let me take advantage of it. And I played bishop f6. So my bishop is now into the game, and it's very, very important to control this diagonal. And now what to do about this knight? You know, the knight doesn't have too many good moves, especially when there's a rook behind it also. So it's a bit pinned. And my opponent played the move knight d4. Well, I think this is not a great move, but it's really hard to suggest anything good. For example, if you would have played rook b1, at a minimum, I could have played the move like bishop c3. And if he takes, knight takes is just forking everything. And again, knight g5 still is also a very good choice, where I improve my position of the bishop, and he just played rook from a1 to b1. So in any event, he tried to play aggressively with knight d4, and of course, knight g5. And in this position, you can see that there's already lots and lots of trouble. Really, really, a real problematic position. My opponent originally told me that they planned to play h4, but after h4, well, in the game, did he play h4? No, he played queen g2, right? If h4, what would have happened? Bishop takes d4 check, rook takes d4, knight f3 check, and knight takes rook. So already the bishop that came to the long diagonal proves quite strong. So queen g2. Unfortunately, again, this doesn't change a whole lot in the position because, again, black simply played takes, takes, knight f3 check, one more time, king here, knight takes d4, bishop takes d6. Again, maybe for a moment that looked like a really good solution because the bishop is forking two rooks, but again, everything happens with time. Check and check, and of course my opponent was stuck. Now down an exchange and a pawn, and of course not much hope, and resign. Of course I can move my rook, I can just take the knight and be up a piece. So again, in a position where all the pieces are concentrating on one side of the board with absolutely nothing productive happening, and there's a weakness in the king side / center, don't be afraid to do something. Sometimes it's a strike in the center, sometimes it's a sacrifice. In this position, it was just a simple sacrifice. Again, you lose a knight for 2 pawns, but you get a world of compensation for it, like you saw in this example. Okay, so we are just past the halfway time of the lesson. I guess this is time to let you play as well.